So there's a photo going around. It's from Tower Hamlets. The local elections just happened on May 7th. And people are basically sharing what appears to be an Aspire victory celebration. Now, Aspire is a local political party in the London borough of Tower Hamlets, England. And I am saying those locations quite deliberately, and you will see why in a moment. Here it is. Dozens of Asian men in suits, a few women in traditional dress, posing in front of a Love Tower Hamlets banner, big smiles, and I'm looking at this photo thinking, there is something wrong here. There is something happening in this country that we are not really allowed to talk about very clearly, not properly anyway, not honestly. So today I'm going to. What does a monoculture look like? Because we've been told for 20 years that monocultures are bad, that diversity is the strength, that we need to dismantle homogenous institutions and replace them with something more representative, right? That was the whole project. Here's the thing though, nobody ever told us what happens when the logic of that project runs in one direction only. Nobody told us what happens to the people it was supposed to replace. So let's talk about what just happened. Tower Hamlets, London, election night. You have Aspire Party, who is led by a chap called Lutfur Rahman, and he has a dodgy past to say the least. Just look him up on Google. How is he allowed to lead a party in this great nation? How he is allowed to do it is beyond me. Anyway, his new party wins 33 out of the 45 council seats, a near monopoly. That is single party local governance. That is the reality. And in fact, I will talk about Lutfur Rahman. I will talk about who he is because it is actually important. This is not his first term. In 2014, he was removed from office and found personally guilty of corrupt and illegal practices by an election court. Vote rigging, false statements, what they called undue spiritual influence and intimidation. So religion is never out of the question with these people. But don't worry, guys. There's nothing to fear, nothing to see here. You have these pro migration, multiculturalist types just thinking you can flood the nation with people who use religion to coerce and bully others. This is Britain's future. So, this guy was banned from public office for 5 years in a functioning political culture. That would be career ending. But Britain is far from functioning. So, instead, in 2022, he came back. He won the election, the mayoral election, and has now just extended his party's grip on an almost total dominance of the council. And no one is asking why and how this continues to happen. The BBC? No. Guardian? No. No one. And then, same election night, now in Birmingham, you've probably seen the videos by now. Street celebrations, foreign music, Bhangra music, drums, people in the streets because Muslim independent candidates running largely on a Gaza platform, unseated Labour councillors across the city. Birmingham is now officially a no-party majority city. Labour lost control. But let's talk about this whole running on a Gaza platform thing. These are local elections. Tower Hamlets, Birmingham, local elections. These councils do not have foreign policy powers that we know of. And yet, the deciding electoral issue, the thing that has shifted these seats, was a conflict happening thousands of miles away that is filtered through a specific religious and ethnic identity that is in parts of these cities now large enough to decide who runs local government. So what we have now is a new political realignment and reality that the commentariat are struggling to even name, let alone analyze. Now, even if you want to say, look, this is just describing democracy, people move, communities form, they vote for who represents them, what's your problem? Well, my problem is that this trajectory is not slowing down. This trajectory of whole cities being reshaped politically, demographically, from the inside, it's not stopping, it is accelerating. And we are not having honest conversations about what that means for a concept called common identity. Common identity, but also preservation of the majority culture and population. The 2021 census told us that the white British population in England and Wales had fallen from around 80% to around 75% in a single decade. In London, and this is already the case, this is not a projection, white British people are around 35% of the population. already a minority in their own capital city. And this distribution is not even, it is concentrated, which means you have whole boroughs, whole districts, whole towns where white British people are not just a minority, but a statistical rarity. By 2040, on current trends, several of our major cities will have white British populations in the low 20s or below. The generation currently going through primary school in London, in Birmingham, in Leicester, in parts of Bradford, that generation is already majority non-white. Which actually is a crisis, especially when you combine this with the absence of a common majority culture that everyone is expected to join. When integration is now optional, when the expectation of a shared identity has been replaced by this kind of management and proliferation of separate identities, you cannot have whole areas, whole council wards, whole boroughs, whole towns that operate according to a different set of cultural assumptions. And then those assumptions are then shielded from scrutiny because to scrutinize them, now you're a racist. So what you are building is parallel societies. It's not a diverse society, it's parallel. And parallel societies don't converge. History is extremely clear on this. In fact, history, but not just history, but also the present. Look at what happened in Leicester in 2022. Hindu and Muslim communities, both long-standing in the city, both British, both supposedly integrated, rioting in the streets after a cricket match, using the language of subcontinental communal conflict, importing a grievance that had absolutely nothing to do with Leicester and everything to do with identities that had never been asked to become fully and primarily British. Keep your identities is fine. Racist to suggest otherwise. That is what parallel societies look like. We actually have to talk about the demographics in this nation. We need to have some sort of reverse diversity, reverse quota targets. There should be no schools where whites are a minority, no councils, no boroughs, no towns where this becomes the norm. The same applies to certain workplaces and businesses. In some parts of Birmingham, Luton, you walk into Boots or Tesco and the staff are almost entirely South Asian. There has to be a drastic change. We have a political and media class that has decided that certain communities can mobilize ethnically, religiously, politically as a bloc. This is called empowerment. It's celebrated. It's covered warmly. It's analyzed sympathetically with attention to the genuine grievances underneath it and the democratic energy that it represents. And then if you notice the pattern, if you name it, if you talk about it, if you say actually, if you say, look, this looks like the formation of separate political identities, then you are the problem. And I want to be specific about what that silencing actually costs. Because it's not just an abstract free speech point. What this silencing actually costs is the ability to course correct. In any system, political, biological, mechanical, you need feedback loops. You need the ability to say, look, this is going wrong before that damage goes beyond repair. What the progressive consensus has done with this instinct to shut down certain conversations before they even start is to remove that feedback loop, to make the course correction impossible by making the diagnosis unsayable. So tell me, how do we move forward from this? The honest reality is that we just cannot. Think about the political history of the last decade. In this country, think about how many times working class communities, white communities, but not exclusively white, they sent signals through the electoral system that were then ignored or misread or explained away. Brexit, the Red Wall collapse in 2019, every single one of those moments, the response from the commentariat class was essentially, well, they're just wrong, they're scared, they've been manipulated, they don't understand their own interests. Not once did the official centre ask whether the signals were legitimate. Why don't we actually pay attention and listen? And if the last 10 years have taught us anything, is that the longer you refuse to name a pattern, to listen to your people, the more explosive its eventual expression becomes. I'm genuinely sick of everything. I'm genuinely sick and tired of living in this country because this is a country where white British people cannot even name a demographic reality without losing jobs. A country where one community can celebrate a political victory in the streets with drums, Punjabi music, and it's joyful. It's covered as a cultural moment, but the moment English people wave a flag, it becomes a security concern. a symbol of latent aggression, a health and safety disaster. Get them flags off the streets. This asymmetry is not an accident. This is the product of a political culture that has internalized one set of permissions for some communities and a completely different set for others. And pretending that this asymmetry is neutrality, it's, positivity, progress. This is one of the greatest intellectual frauds of our time. We are being led by frauds and by people who hate their own people. We need to course correct. How? I'll say it again. If you want diversity targets, fine. Apply them to Tower Hamlets. Apply it there. Apply them to school demographic compositions in areas where white British children are approaching statistical invisibility. Apply them to businesses that are informally monoethnic. If the principle is that homogeneity is a problem, if that is genuinely what we believe, then let's apply it as a principle, not as a weapon pointed selectively at one group. I'll leave it there. There's so much to talk about in relation to this. This country is becoming a big joke. Let me know your comments. I genuinely want to hear from you, whether you agree with me or not. That is what this channel is for. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you on the next one. But before you go, if you've been on this channel for a while, watched the first, the second, the third, fourth videos mine, I would like to ask you to become a member of this channel today. Click the join, that will make my day, and that will allow this channel to grow even bigger and better than it is today. See you again. Take care.